There was once a young man named Kai, a simple soul with a quiet heart. He lived in a small valley where the air was clean. The hills rolled like waves, and mornings smelled of rain and pine. Kai wasn't rich. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even particularly lucky. But he had something that wouldn't let him rest, a dream. He wanted to grow something that would outlive him. Not just a tree or a crop, but something that would stay, a mark, a legacy, a reminder that he was here. But the problem was, he didn't know how. So one day, Kai went to visit the old sage on the hill, a man the villagers called Arvin, who had seen more seasons than anyone could count. Kai bowed deeply and asked, "Master, how do I grow something that never dies?" Arvin looked at him with eyes that had seen too much of life. Then, without a word, he reached into a small leather pouch and pulled out a tiny pale seed. It looked ordinary and almost lifeless. "This," said Arvin, "is your answer." Kai blinked. "A seed?" Arvin smiled faintly. "Not just any seed. This one grows only when you stop counting the days." Kai frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Patience, boy," said the sage, voice deep and calm. "Patience is the sunlight of faith. If you rush it, you'll kill it." And with that, Arvin turned and walked away, leaving Kai standing there, a small seed in his palm, and 1,000 questions in his mind. Kai returned home, found a quiet patch of soil behind his cottage, and planted the seed. The next morning he rushed out, nothing. The next week, nothing. A month later, still nothing. The neighbors laughed. "Mate, what are you doing staring at dirt?" One said with a grin. "Maybe it's dead," another joked in a soft Canadian accent. Even his mother sighed, "Goo Kai, maybe plant something you can actually eat, huh?" But Kai couldn't let go. Every morning he'd water that patch of soil, whispering softly, "Grow when you're ready." Seasons changed. Spring became summer. Summer burned into autumn. Autumn froze into winter. Still, the ground stayed bare. His hands grew rough, his clothes wore thin, and his heart slowly began to question everything. "Maybe the old man fooled me," he thought one cold night. The wind outside howled like it agreed. That night Kai didn't water the soil. He didn't whisper to the seed. He just sat by the fire, tired of hoping for something he couldn't see. By the next spring, Kai stopped visiting the garden altogether. He took up carpentry, working long days fixing fences and mending roofs. He laughed again sometimes, but it wasn't real laughter, just a habit. Years slipped by like sand between fingers. The dreamer became a worker. The believer became practical, and the seed forgotten. One morning, years later, a traveler arrived in the valley, a merchant from the north with a thick accent, maybe Norwegian. He pointed behind Kai's cottage and said, "Who owns that place with the golden tree?" Kai frowned. "Golden tree?" He turned confused and froze. Right there, where he had once planted the seed, stood a massive tree. Its trunk glowed faintly in the sunlight. Its leaves shone golden like dawn reflected in water. It was alive, tall, beautiful, and utterly impossible. Kai dropped the tool in his hand. He walked toward it slowly, heart pounding, each step echoing like a heartbeat. He touched the bark. It was warm. The branches hummed softly in the breeze. The air smelled like life. It was his seed. It had grown. It had grown when he'd stopped watching, when he'd stopped doubting, when he'd finally let go. Word spread fast. People came from nearby towns, even other valleys, to see what they called the Tree of Light. Some prayed beneath it, some touched its bark for good luck. Others just stood there, silent, as if it spoke to something deep inside them. Kai would sit under its golden shade for hours thinking. Once he whispered to himself, "Why now? Why after all this time?" And somehow, in that silence, he heard the answer inside him, not in words but in feeling. Because faith doesn't grow when you stare at it. It grows when you trust it. One afternoon, a small boy ran up to Kai, holding a seed in his hand. "Sir," he said, "how do I make this grow like yours?" Kai smiled, eyes gentle. "You don't make it grow," he said. "You believe it will." The boy frowned. "But what if it takes too long?" Kai chuckled softly. "Then you wait even longer." The boy's eyes widened, half confused, half inspired, and he ran off, holding his seed like treasure. That night Kai sat beneath the golden tree again. He looked up at the stars, through its glowing leaves, and remembered that cold winter night long ago, the night he almost gave up. He realized something powerful. Sometimes what feels like an ending is just the soil settling before the bloom. He touched the roots beside him, feeling the pulse of life beneath. He smiled, a tired but peaceful smile, and whispered, "Thank you for growing when I lost hope." Years passed. Kai grew old. His hands, once strong, trembled when he touched the bark. His hair turned white like mountain snow. But the tree, it never stopped glowing. It grew taller, stronger, its light brighter with every sunrise. One dawn, as the valley filled with mist, Kai sat beneath the tree and watched the sun climb over the hills. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Patience was the rain, and faith was the sun." And that morning, as the first light touched his face, Kai drifted away, peaceful, smiling. When the villagers found him, they said he looked like he was only sleeping. They buried him beneath the golden tree, the same soil that once held a forgotten seed. And every year after that, on the same day Kai passed, the tree would shed a shower of golden leaves, floating gently like tears of light. Children began calling it Kai's rain, and soon the entire valley learned what it meant. That even the smallest act of faith can grow into something eternal, if only you give it time. Generations came and went. The valley changed. Cottages turned into towns. Roads replaced the old dirt paths. But the tree still stood, radiant, unshaken, timeless. Travelers from all over the world came to see it. Americans, Brits, Canadians, Aussies, Germans, Norwegians, Kiwis. They all stood there beneath its golden light. And no one spoke for a while. Because in that quiet glow, everyone felt the same thing. That deep, wordless truth that patience and faith are not old values. They're eternal powers. They called it the lost seed. But those who really understood it, those who'd waited, worked, failed, and still believed, they called it something else. They called it the proof that faith works. Because faith isn't about seeing results. It's about believing something is happening, even when nothing seems to be. Kai didn't fail when the seed didn't grow. He failed when he doubted it would. And he succeeded the moment he let go and trusted the unseen. That's what patience is. That's what faith is. A seed doesn't bloom because you stare at it. It blooms because you believe in the soil, even when the ground looks empty. Maybe right now you've planted something too. A dream, a goal, a love, a purpose. And maybe it looks like nothing's happening, like it's gone. But what if it's not dead? What if it's just rooting deeper, quietly preparing to rise when you least expect it? Faith isn't fast. Faith is timeless. And one day, when you've almost forgotten what you planted, you'll walk past that same patch of soil and see gold where you once saw dust. Kai's story isn't about a seed. It's about you. It's about every person who dared to believe when everyone else gave up. Every dreamer who kept watering hope even when the ground looked empty. So when life tests your patience, when the wait feels endless, remember what the old sage once said. Faith doesn't bloom overnight. Patience is its sunlight. And maybe, just maybe, what you think you've lost is already growing beneath the surface, invisible, unseen, but alive, just like Kai's seed. The lost seed, the power of patience and faith. A story about waiting, a story about believing, a story about the quiet miracle that happens when you trust the unseen.